Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
All right, welcome back to Pasture Prime Time, where soil speaks, ranches teach, and the Renaissance is rooted in the land. Today's guest is the embodiment of legacy meeting innovation. He's a third-generation steward with a 400-year family ranching lineage, and the Senior Vice President of Grass and Rangeland at EarthOptics, a trailblazing ag tech company turning soil data into action. From carbon markets to cattle, this man knows how to make the land work smarter and regenerate stronger. James Clement is not only shaping the future of sustainable agriculture, he's living it. A U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer by training, a rancher by blood, and a technologist by mission, James bridges tradition with tech, humility, and grit. James, it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to diving into some questions around rangeland management and some other questions around regenerative agriculture. But before we get going, maybe you can give us a bit more insight on the journey it's led you to where you are today.
Sure. Thank you, Neil, for having me. And so based on what you said there, so my mother's family ranches in Northwest Texas, Beggs Cattle Company. Next year's our 150th year of ranching. And then my father's family's King Ranch in South Texas since 1853. And then to your point, so I've worked for both those operations over the years. And but then also about almost 15 years ago, took over a third generation operation, and we've been growing that. And now we run cows on some lease country, grazing regeneratively on 5 ranches in total in South Texas. And almost 3 years ago, I joined EarthOptics, like you said, as a background in the Marines and ranching, and kind of outside of Texas, been to Florida and Australia, worked on some ranches there, and then Marine Corps took me a few places, but I'm happy to be at EarthOptics. We're a soil measurement mapping company. I met our boss, CEO Lars Dierud, on a job on King Ranch, and asked for a job a couple months later. And so we measure compaction, moisture infiltration, nutrients, biology, and then carbon. And so a lot of my job is facilitating the process and sale of carbon credits from well-managed lands, but also kind of trying to bring more tools and techniques to ranchers through the information we can provide, and so they can action hopefully better management practices based on that information, that kind of thing as well.
Amazing. And what's your level of response you're getting from sort of the different generations that are currently in ranching throughout North America, primarily? What's the sentiment on the technology and what you're doing in terms of measuring and using that data for monetization and other purposes?
Well, it's like anything in agriculture, especially ranching. There's a slow evolution for people to take things seriously or to consider new ways to do business. And so, that's a big part of my job, is trying to, I'm a believer in this. I'm a customer of this as well. So I sell carbon credits from 3 operations and almost my 4th currently. And so I've seen it. I've seen the dollars and cents. I've seen hey, look, if you're managing in a high regard for the land with a generational mindset, like, there are definitely opportunities to take advantage of that. And so I'm a believer, because what I worry about is whether it's ecosystem damage or cultural damage to agriculture, especially ranching in this country and other parts of the world. How can we help that rancher keep that land ranching, whether it's generationally with their family or to a new buyer, a new owner, to put them on the right track to make a more sustainable business. And so that's why these ecosystem service markets are so important to me, because in the history of American ranching, there's been very little or no opportunities to pay people for being good stewards. It was always about how many cows can you run, or how many crops can you produce, or what can you do this year or even this quarter to make money, and not, hey, can you look at a long-term vision of the land and do what's right and get paid for that, whether that's carbon credits or water, or and in the past too, there's been opportunities to sell natural resources, to sell water to a town, or to, for fracking or something like that. What if we can pay people to maintain that water, and for refilling aquifers, for the benefit of the overall wildlife and cattle on the land, and that's what we're doing. And then we're also involved in scope 3 and insetting, and so taking all of that information that we just said, another way you can attach that to the commodity. So if it's carbon neutral or carbon reduced products, or if it's, all of the, and ranchers and farmers and feeders are already doing this. They're quantifying the amount of consumption of these resources, because that's better for their bottom line. If they can create a more productive animal or more productive food system where it's growing more crops, growing more pounds of protein for less nutrients, less resources, that's a benefit to their operation. And so again, all of these things have now the opportunity for somebody to be paid for that, and not just do it for the bottom line of their business. And that's all exciting for me.
That's amazing. Yeah. I really champion what you're doing. I think it's very important for us to provide these new mechanisms and new opportunities. There's a word that comes up often, and you probably run across it, a little word called regenerative. And I'd love to hear what regenerative rangeland management actually looks like to you on the ground. And getting beyond the buzzword itself, what does that actually look like from your perspective?
That that's not quite a firebrand, but an issue with a lot of people, right? Because you go back to the kind of the Alan Savory, the first person to kind of try to present this to the world, and he called it holistic, and then there's sustainable, and now regenerative, and they all mean something different, in terms of definition, but they all really point to the same thing. Are you improving the land as you manage it? And so whatever you're doing to increase productivity, does that not come to the detriment of the overall land? And then it's very much, as you know, soil based, rainfall based, climate based, and so you can't put a certain set of parameters around what it means. It's got to be catered to that place. And so that's what it means to me. It means, look, whatever you're doing on the operation, is it getting better on a year-over-year basis? And so, like on our personal place, we've doubled our stocking rates. We have more cattle than we've ever had, but at the same time, we've also more than doubled the quality of our forage, the quantity of our forage. We've improved our soil. We've made better use of our water, and so that is what it means to me. Is you're running a productive operation financially, a sustainably financial operation, but it's also a truly sustainable in the land where it's getting better over time.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. It's more about that hyper-localization thinking and improvements of systems that are leading to that overall regenerative state. What at EarthOptics, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a service that I think would be interesting to explore a little bit in more detail, which is scan your land now and do something with that data later. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I find very quickly, and maybe you're finding this when you're speaking with ranchers, farmers, producers, it's how quickly can we go and get into the carbon market space? And there's, potentially a mislead of, how fast that can turn around and monetize. You're certainly doing it. There's a lot of great use cases out there, but I really kind of want to come back to collecting data. I think is an important aspect, and what you do with that data at what time is, secondary or tertiary in, the overall opportunity of just baselining or collecting data in a way that is meaningful. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about that opportunity.
Sure, and like it takes one set of skills to collect the data, another set of skills to take advantage of that, and so we're, to your point, the baseline is important. A lot of people in these markets, they're saying, well, I want to wait and see, and waiting and seeing is fine, but if you don't have any information, if you have no data, no collection to show where you were at time zero or whatever time in place, then you're never going to be able to take advantage of the wait and seeing approach. So I always
Yeah.
tell people, if you get into it, the sale of credits, whatever that makes in terms of your bottom line for you today is not the
Hmm.
important part. The important part is, look, if there's going to be a progress, if there's going to be an improvement over time, then there's the ability to take advantage of the fact that you took that data at a certain time and you took advantage of that. So like on a lot of ranches, you have historical kind of heifer pastures or horse pastures or bull pastures where they have either cyclical or set stocking rates. Cyclical meaning bulls come on and off the herd either once or twice a year, and then go back into that pasture. Heifers get weaned off their cows, put into that, and then developed in that pasture. And so there's a stagnation to what is happening at operation in terms of like every year it's getting a not a set stock amount because that would change, but it's getting the same amount of animal impact at the same time of year. And if there's any way, and even hay pastures and crops and a lack of crop rotation, if there was a way
Hmm.
where you could take the information that we're gathering and say, well, if this is what this pasture looks like, that's historically a heifer pasture, and this is what a cow pasture looks like that I rest and rotate or that I adjust stocking rate based on rainfall, is there an opportunity for me to switch these? And there's a convenience factor too, right? Because usually the heifer and horse pastures are close to headquarters where you can take advantage of the fact that you can check those animals more often or grab your horse in the morning, etc. But
Yeah.
if there was any ability for you to take advantage of that and say, well, this year I'm going to move the horses over to here and I'm going to move the heifers over to there, and I'm going to rest that pasture, or I'm going to surge it with cows because we've got heavier rainfall, so I'm going to put some heavy grazers on there, and then I can just have that mix because nature wants to see the spontaneity. Nature wants to see
Hmm.
a kind of non-man-made adjustment. It is man-made. What I'm saying is like, but to keep it guessing,
Hmm.
I compare it to people talk about it when you're working out, right? Like you don't want to do the same workout for 30 years. You've got to rotate and do different things to make your body adjust to that, and that overall improves the health of your body, improves the muscles. It's the same with the soil. If the
Yeah.
soil is adjusted and rested, and then and intensely grazed, maybe lightly grazed another year, not grazed at all, rotated, grazed at different times of the year, all of that can benefit to the overall soil health. But again, that soil data can show that. And the other thing I think that's important about soil data is that all of the ways, forage analysis or wildlife analysis or you know body conditioning score on a cow, all of that is absolutely a tool you can use. But the
Hmm.
most scalable and the most accurate data you can gather is data like EarthOptics would gather, where it's saying, hey, this is what the soil looks like right now. And
Yeah.
so then that can provide probably the best answers to the test for somebody who's trying to be a better operator.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things I want to dive into a little bit, just to take another topic to dive into, you know, we have a ton of pressures. We're both very aware of that as owner operators, as well as working within the industry. Drought, policy shifts, land grabs. I'd love for you to share a little bit of what you think are some of the biggest threats in rangeland right now, maybe right now and over the next decade, if you want to sort of take a future look into that. And conversely, we'll get into what are some of the positives, but let's start with some of those threats, those things that are of concern right now.
I often tell people that in my opinion, what people knew 50 years ago was just as complex and just as important as it is today. But today you have to learn so many more things. The things you just mentioned, different
Hmm.
updates to taxes, different updates to markets, different ways to, it used to be the way to market your calves used to be more simplistic, where now
Hmm.
there's all these opportunities. So I think the biggest threat that often a lot of people probably wouldn't say is a lack of adaptation. And so if people are not open to all these things, this is because again, as people say, well, look at how high the cattle market is. Well, also all the input costs are higher than they've ever been. And
Yeah.
and land ownership, land leases are they go up as much as the market does. And so the margins aren't any better than they were in normal years, even though the revenue is higher. And
Yeah.
so I think the biggest threat is like, again, what I grind in a lot is like trying to convince people to take all of these new opportunities seriously, these new technologies, because it's like, this is the way that you can win in your operation, but people are stagnant to take on these new approaches. And
Right.
the only way we can keep up with everything that happens to affect us is by utilizing these technologies, and maybe even trying them and saying what they're not solving, what's not working, and making them better faster. Because
Yeah.
with the artificial intelligence and the machine learning, like at EarthOptics, like or at other companies, is like, you can teach those things to be better faster as long as
Hmm.
you're giving good feedback. And
Hmm.
but again, you've got to have the door open where you're allowing that onto your place, and then you're having that conversation with the people that develop that, because there's a lot of people out there that want to help, but we still are reluctant to accept the help and
Hmm.
then make that help better.
Hmm. Why do you think that is? What do you think the resistance is? Is it
Well,
incentives? Is it
yeah,
funding? Is it?
I think the biggest thing is, like, people that want to be in agriculture, they there's a certain personality that doesn't really want to focus on all of the adaptation, all of the change that's out there. They like the history, the culture,
Hmm.
the lifestyle, and so and generally they fell in love with those things because they connected them to their ancestors, or because they connected them to the culture that they want to be a part of. But and so if you can bring people with an open mind that are or take people that are already in it and open their mind,
Hmm.
uh, you can allow them that ability to want to flex that muscle and want to make those changes and everything like that. And so I'm not saying it's a negative personality trait. I'm just saying it's this lifestyle attracts those that maybe aren't as always open to those kind of concepts.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a very fair statement. I'd love to hear a little bit, James, on what's happening in your neck of the woods. You're down in the Texas area, in the state, um, and you do quite a bit of traveling around there. Are there unique things going on within Texas from a rangeland perspective that you could share with us, or things that you may be seeing that are of curious nature that might help some ranchers in other states, even all the way up into Canada?
Yeah, I think I do appreciate the fact that a lot of the schools nowadays are not keeping their students just locked into the classroom. They're allowing more internships, more
Mm,
white paper opportunities, more abilities to solve a real world problem on a ranch. King Ranch Institute comes to mind. Uh, it is it's a systems thinking approach, so it's pulling a problem apart, not solving just the 6-inch problem, but looking at what is the overall trend in a business, and how do we fix that
mm-hmm,
holistically. And
mm-hmm,
and again, they're very in tune to problems of the day, problems in the markets, problems in the operation, and then also, staying up to date on what the solutions are. And and so I do like seeing that approach, where it on the school side, and then on the rangeland side. I mean, I think it's what we were already talking about. Is there are more and more people that are taking over their operation, and they're getting to a point where they want to be challenged and want to find out the things that they're not doing. Maybe the neighbor's doing it, maybe somebody they met in a webinar or a program is doing it, but how do they adjust, how do they adapt, how do they bring in those tools from another place to their region, whether that's from Canada down to here, throughout the US, or other, Latin America.
all right. So James, you shared a little bit about education right at the school level, in terms of continuing to edify and passing on that knowledge sharing aspect of what we do in the field, and then the integration of technology comes into play there too. Um, I'd love to hear more about what's going on in Texas from your perspective, particularly around rangeland and ranching that might be unique. And as you're talking, maybe you can think about those pieces of technology that really sort of have caught your attention, specifically for ranching, that you may want to share with us as well.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to finish that last point is this: that used to be that you could go to your neighbors or to local events to get the information, but now with the shrinking of the world, with all these webinars and Zooms, and you can pull advice from all over the world and implement that. And so that it's great to watch these lessons kind of move more quickly. And to your point, outside of the soil side, uh, two other groups that I'm directly involved with, because I'm a big believer in both of them too. One is a ranch bot water monitoring, and just very, very simple, right? It's how do I know the amount of flow, the quality of my water, the condition, when my cattle are drinking, are they going to the trough,
Mm-hmm.
what times a day do they go there? I can check that all from my phone. Rain gauges with rain reports where it's all quantified, so I know where rain's hitting certain places, so I know how can I adjust my stocking rate based on highly accurate information that's all saved in my phone and easy to monitor.
Right.
And I love that technology. It's not to mention just the simple fact that some waters that I would have to check might be a 90-mile drive to get to them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to take half a day just to look at a water that's already working. And so to be able to check that from your phone is, again, it's not difficult to understand how that all works, but it's just a huge time saver in terms of checking the overall health of the population of the animals, but also of the water, the resource itself.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Another one that I really like on the artificial intelligence side is Frontier's Market, that is taking a phone, and kind of the thing that I've talked with Evan, that founded that company, a lot about, is that what we're not replacing is the steady long-term hand that can judge an animal on the hoof, the
Mm-hmm.
health of the animal, the breed type. Are they ready to breed? Are they eating enough? Are they hanging their head? What are they doing? And so the ability to use a phone or a GoPro, any camera, any digital camera out there, and to get all this body condition data, breed data, weight data, gain data, all this health and efficiency information that, again, is automatically uploaded, and I'm not having to sit there, stop, write down on a notepad, lose those notes, forget what I wrote, not put into my computer. Like, all this data, whether it's the soil, the water, the animals itself, is
Mm-hmm.
automatically loaded into a system where I can now check it when I get back to the office, or I can even utilize that to tell me exactly what animals, what water, what soil is least or most productive or marginal, and then make adjustments based on all of that data. And so it's not telling you the answers, but there's a near future where it would tell you the answers, but it's getting you to a point where making an answer is so much easier for somebody.
Right.
And it takes out a lot of the guesswork of, like, well, I think this is getting better, I think I can do that, or because that's what keeps ranchers and farmers up at night is,
Yeah.
should I have done this? I wish I'd done that. I remember seeing that 5 years ago, but what happened? What did I do? Why did I do it? My notes aren't clear, or I haven't retained enough. And so this is all auto-populated and turned into a very easy to digest platform where you can say, okay, this is the decision I made before. These are the results. Do I do that again, or do I make a different decision based on all of that information that I'm gathering? And so again, we're going to get to a point where we're going to all be inundated with information,
Mm-hmm.
and so then it'll be, okay, how do I action that? But that's a good place to be, to have more information rather than less, because there was in the past, it was, like I tell people, it was 40 years of hoping you're doing the right thing and guessing you
Right.
were. And then right when you get to where you're really proficient at your operation, you're at such an older stage in life, you're looking at retirement, or you've got to hire the next person. They're going to start the cycle over. But if
Mm-hmm.
you can have those things trained where it's got these lessons learned, where the new person steps into the role, or somebody who's not as experienced can kind of, again, get answers to the test that much more quickly. That takes
Mm-hmm.
away the frustration. That takes away the bad years. It takes the bad years and makes them okay years, and the okay years and makes them better years, so that on an overall trend, you're in a better position as an operator. And those things are really exciting for me.
Yeah, that is exciting. It's part and parcel why we do the work over at Grows, taking that vast amount of data and being able to put it somewhere safe, in terms of having it in a tamper proof, and be able to pass that down and translate that into a knowledge share opportunity. So Yeah, very much.
And that's how you and I really kind of got attached, is,
Yeah.
believing in what grow is doing. And I mean, to take very sophisticated technology into agriculture, like, it's happened at certain levels, but
Hmm.
you know to be able to utilize a blockchain at this level and to be able to take advantage of that, like that's where grow is really impressive to me, because these are the things that it would have taken a longer period of time to get to an agriculture
Hmm.
operation, and seeing those things move faster and learn faster, that's exceptional.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. What uh, is, we talk a little bit about technology and how it's exciting, and there's fast movement in terms of being able to learn and make some better decisions. But how do we retain some of that ancestral knowledge base? How do we continue to have the human aspect? And this is a question that I challenge myself on a regular basis. We've got wonderful technology, but how do we ensure that we're not replacing that wonderful component of human observation out in the field, which I spend a lot of time doing, and even just that interaction of humanity that is very much needed, so that we can continue to learn at pace with technology. But how do we make sure we don't lose that from your perspective?
I've actually been saying this lately. You and I don't know how to recruit the younger generations and the future generations to be in
Mm,
agriculture. And we now have way more opportunity for them to, like, for all the companies I've mentioned before, EarthOptics, Ranch Spot Frontiers, and many others. You now have people in agriculture that never probably considered, whether when they were growing up or going through school, of being in agriculture, but because the technology is there, now they're seeing, hey, this is a pathway, this is an opportunity for me. and and that is, it's really great about our time in the world, is that, they might want to get in because of generational, because of they've always wanted to be in a farming or ranching uh, lifestyle. But now we're recruiting people from totally outside our traditional kind of lanes,
mm-hmm,
to get them into this world. And so I think that's how the future farmer rancher is probably not going to be the same person we thought it was going to be in the past. But you have the opportunity to pull to a much larger pool of people to recruit from,
mm-hmm,
because there's so many. And somebody that's coming from Silicon Valley and in technology, and they get into one of these companies, then all of a sudden they're in agriculture, and they didn't even foresee how that path would have happened, but they
mm-hmm.
were solving a problem to make technology better for the solution of agriculture. And and now all of a sudden they have a career in agriculture, but it's from a technology platform. And maybe they pivot one day to be directly involved with managing livestock or farmland, uh, but because that was their background before. And you see that in other sectors, right, where they can recruit from a wider pool because those talents uh, can be supplemented into a role. But I don't feel like we've
Mm-hmm.
seen that as much in the past in ag, where
Mm-hmm.
we're now pulling from all these different kind of variations.
Yeah, it's very true. You see a lot more integration with other market spaces and just other skill sets that we haven't seen in the past, um, which is pushing us to have different conversations, which I really appreciate as well. Right the way through our supply chain, even off the field, and how do we get down to the consumer in different ways. I'd love to bring up a topic, and it's an unfortunate topic, but I'd like to just have a quick conversation about it before we wrap up. The New World screwworm. Is that impacting you in any of your operations? Is that something that you have some thoughts around, and some of your management practices, and how's that impacting EarthOptics and even data gathering and the transmission of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not directly affecting us yet, but it's the elephant in the room, right? It's
Mm,
all around us, but not on top of us right now. And so, you know, can we fix the problem with data alone? No. We need inert flies broadcasted all over the world, and all of this. But the technology, like, for example, we were King Ranch and East Foundation hosted a all day discussion about this, and Texas A&M is
mm,
even utilizing pretty intensive breeding techniques because when you breed these flies, you're breeding males and females. Well, you can't do anything with the female because you need to breed a non-functioning male and broadcast those out to breed, to attempt to breed, which will cause no breeding. But now you can lower the amount of females being bred and breed all males. And so that technology is happening out there. And so like there are technology solutions for and different sprays. They're even looking at different light technology that can possibly kill a bug and not affect anything else. And so as a cow goes through the chute or goes through the pins, you're hitting them with certain rays that are causing that effect. And so, but on what we're talking about is more on the management side. It's the ability to see what animals are entering in my areas, what animals are drinking my waters, what soils are being affected from certain things, and being able to try to put algorithms together that say, okay, how do I protect myself best based on all the data I know about, physical data of the fly movements coming up. Because like one of the things we saw is from the Yucatan Peninsula moving up to Veracruz, it took 17 years to beat the fly back south on that same area, that it only took 3 years for that fly to advance north in these last 3 years. And so, I mean, it's rushing up here just because of migration, cattle movements, human movements, etc. But it's like, okay, so what can we do to monitor those cattle, whether that's AI, whether that's ear tags, whether that's, again, all the other things we've already discussed. And so you are seeing technology help to thwart that. But it's really going to supplement a lot of the lessons learned in the past. But that's also a whole, I mean, it took people reading studies 40 and 50 and 60 years old and learning about what was done in the past. What if we get to a point where we know immediately of this is where it's coming, this is the precautions that need to happen, this is the proactive steps need to be taken, and all of that information was able to be very clearly read and actioned more quickly. That would be a great way to thwart these things. And EarthOptics is looking at ways where we can, based on certain things happening in the soil, what is going to be more receptive to certain parasites in the soil. And so what algorithms can be put in place to say, what are the likelihoods, and digital twins, which I love too. It's all of the ways that you can look at the same acre and all the things that could happen and what are your threats there, and how do you fight those threats from a proactive standpoint? Because that's the more proactive we can be, so we're not ever caught on our heels again. Because that's what the biggest issues in livestock, it's when we were caught either off guard or we just didn't have the steps in place to fight it from from an earlier position. And so that would be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think once we get there, right, it is coming quite quickly. It really is going to change the way we operate as ranchers and farmers. As we're near the end of our discussion here, James, I'd like to open the floor up, as I often do, for you to share anything that's happening in your region, some of the boards you sit on, some of the associations, or anything that you think we should know and the audience should know about what's going on with EarthOptics.
Well, I'm actually on my way to my first meeting. I'm on the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, and
Okay.
I think for me, it's more and more important to be hooked in with all these decisions being made, because, as you know, the pressure is happening especially in a place like Texas where you have this huge population increase, and so the natural resources needed for feeding our state, feeding our country, it's just as much pressure, whether that's building houses on the most beneficial soil, interacting with the floodplains and the negative. We've just had these horrible floods in Texas, and as much as that's rainfall and as much as you can point to other things, a lot of that is us not focusing on the lessons of what is a floodplain, what does that mean, where are we pouring cement to, divert what used to be floodplain into a more intense storm, more intense catastrophic event. And climate change is often blamed, and there's a factor of that happening, but a lot of that is, again, back to like what you said about the screwworm, is like, if we don't understand why these water systems and these soil systems and these cycles are in place, then we're going to keep having these catastrophic effects on our human population. And also, as we pursue more and more opportunities for fresh water and removing salinity and all that, as we remove that brine water, as we take that off, what is that doing to our ecosystems, to our natural waters, to our salt waters, to our shoreline? And we cannot sacrifice our ecosystems for the sake of human population of own. It's got to be within the grounds of mutually beneficial to both. And so getting people involved with those groups like the Soil and Water Board or like these other environmental quality boards, all of that, like gone are the days when a rancher can keep their head down and avoid the conversation. You've got to be proactively engaged with that so that it's not to the detriment of your business, because you could be doing everything possible inside your fence and still have something detrimental to your operation that's outside of your control if you're not engaged.
Yeah. I really think that's a powerful message, James, and I appreciate you sharing that. Is be more proactive, get engaged, ask a lot of questions, do your homework. But there's a lot of resources out there that just aren't being tapped into readily enough, and I see that all over the country. So I certainly second and third that in terms of engagement. And there's great conferences as well that have a lot of resources. For cattlemen, for grain producers, and CEA. And so those conferences are a good spot to find those local, hyper-local agencies, associations. So to all of our listeners out there, if you're not finding it locally, look for some conferences in your area. There's usually good ones in every state.
Absolutely. People will say, well, I don't have time to do that. And it's like, you don't have time not to do that.
That's right.
And so whatever you can do to adjust your management plan so that you have the availability to be a voice and be heard is so important.
Absolutely. And where can we find EarthOptics in the near future here? Are you attending any conferences coming up? Is your team going to be somewhere in the world of interest? Where's the next spotlight for EarthOptics?
There's so many ag conferences out there. I think the big ones, Trust and Beef. I'm hosting Trust and Beef at our ranches in South Texas for a couple days, and it leads into the King Ranch Institute Symposium. It's the first week in November. That's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of networking and a lot of great people being there, technology companies, cattle raisers, ranch managers, etc. And then so there's a few of those events throughout the year. And then, we'll be at a lot of soil and water events throughout the country. But earthoptics.com and all of the social media pages will give people those updates and those opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, James. I really appreciate you taking time here on your way to your meeting to stop and have a chat with me, share some of your thoughts about what's happening in agriculture and rangeland management. Looking forward to continuing to interact with EarthOptics as Grow and EarthOptics take on a few projects in the near future here together, and looking forward to seeing you at a conference in the near future. So enjoy
Absolutely.
the rest of your day.
Thank you, Neil.
We'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
You too. Fantastic.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this episode. Remember, it will take a community of us to do the best in the world and truly nourish not only ourselves, but the planet, the atmosphere, the soil, the plants, and the animals on it. So make sure you spread this message anywhere that you can.